Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first webinar in NAPSA's new series entitled NAPSA Presents Experience from the Field. My name is Erica Fleury, and I am the director of NAPSA, also called the North American Primate Sanctuary Alliance. NAPSA is a coalition of the leading sanctuaries on the continent who collectively care for close to 800 rescued apes and monkeys, all of whom came from biomedical research, the entertainment industry, and the pet trade. Every 2 years, NAPSA hosts the NAPSA Workshop, which is an informative conference jam-packed with educational sessions about primate sanctuary management, primate care, and advocacy. Some of you attended our last workshop in Atlanta, and we had a great time. But in the years between our workshops, we are always looking for ways to continue those helpful conversations that NAPSA is known for, the information sharing, the networking. And so we've developed these webinars, NAPSA Presents Experience from the Field. These sessions, including today's, will be recorded for future viewing at the same event link on Facebook that you're watching on now. If you ever have questions about that, please contact NAPSA and we'll get you the recording. Today's session is going to focus on volunteer programs, an absolutely vital part of any flourishing sanctuary. Project Chimps has a strong, thriving program and is well prepared to share their tips and tricks with you today. Future webinars will focus on different topics. So I encourage you to stay engaged with NAPSA on our email list. You can sign up at primatesanctuaries.org or by following us on social media. We are Primate Sanctuary on Facebook and NAPSA Primates on Instagram. I'll drop the links into the chat during this webinar. So next, we're going to hear from Kathryn Durham of Project Chimps. As she speaks, feel free to post questions in the chat box. We will also have time for Q&A at the end of the hour, and we will try to hit as many of your questions as possible. Thank you, and take it away, Kathryn.
Thank you so much, Erica. As Erica said, my name is Kathryn. I'm the volunteer coordinator at Project Chimps. I actually began as a volunteer there shortly before the chimps first arrived. After they came in, I then was hired on as staff as the volunteer coordinator, and it has been a life-changing and awesome experience. So I just feel very fortunate to be able to work with all the great volunteers at Project Chimps. So first of all, why even have a volunteer program? It takes a lot of time to train volunteers. So sometimes people think, why not just do it myself? But the volunteers that we have support our staff, which enables them to spend more time on their core focus, the things that they need to spend the most time on. They're highly educated, our care staff, our whole staff, and it frees them up to have more time to focus on the chimps and to provide even better care to the chimps. Not only that, most of our volunteers are retirees and have an extraordinary amount of expertise. We have retired Army generals, engineers, doctors, lawyers, you name it. We have volunteers that have done all of those things and are able then to use that information and that knowledge to help the sanctuary. Not only that, but our volunteers also happen to be our best donors. They are always providing opportunities to bring in funds or bring in people that will help us with donations and help support the sanctuary. And they're also our biggest cheerleaders. So when we have an outreach event or some other opportunity that volunteers can talk about Project Chimps and the things that they do there, they very happily do that, and it really helps with all of our outreach as well. I have a little video. We're going to show our first video about how much we value and need our volunteers.
A bunch of great volunteers that come specifically in for chimp care, so they help us with the cleaning tasks and that kind of thing in the morning. We have volunteers that come in and help with preparing the meals. We have volunteers that prepare enrichment for us. We have volunteers that do tours for us. We have volunteers that work in the gift shop for us.
And that's one thing I love about volunteering here. The staff is so appreciative of everything that we do. You know, we leave and they're, oh, thank you for being here. Thank you for all you did. I mean, the gratitude just is pouring out. They become friends to us.
When we have chimp care volunteers, especially in Chateau, it is a sigh of relief. So if we hear in the morning, oh, Candy's going to be coming in to Chateau today, it's like, oh, thank God.
I always feel appreciated. You know, the people that work here are always thankful, and I do, and I know all the volunteers do, because it takes some of the burden that they don't have to be wasting their time with, that we can fill in and take care of.
They are so helpful in getting like our chow made, just laying out the bags, that kind of thing, getting toys done while we are shifting the group, something like that.
A lot of things that I do are critical for the care of the chimps. I mean, not just in facilities, because, you know, the chimps don't care if I repair a footbridge here or a, you know, a structure there, but I go get the chow, I go get the, you know, the seeds for them, I go get the wood wool, and I do help out in chimp care as well, working in the villas with the care staff, taking care of the chimps, cleaning up after them, you know, all kinds of things add value.
It helps things go quicker when we have somebody doing the little things, which you don't realize take up so much time.
But you can see that, yes, these people do love and care not only for the chimpanzees, but for each other. They want nothing but to do good. And what kind of a community couldn't want something like that in their area, and is something to be very proud of. And especially this here, a chimpanzee sanctuary.
In our area. So let's talk about the value that volunteers add to your facility. So I recently read an article done by the private sector that valued a volunteer hour at $31.80, which is great. I'm sure it is a little disheartening to our retired doctors and so forth that their value is now at $31.80. But if you add all of that up and all of the expertise up, it really makes a huge difference. For instance, in 2022, our volunteers gave 14,511 hours of service. And if you multiply that for the year at $31.80, in time alone, our volunteers gave $461,000 to the sanctuary. And also, just a side note, that 14,000 hours equates to about 40 hours of service every single day of the year. And we do have volunteers on site every single day of the year. Since inception, our volunteer program began in 2017. We have over 88,000 hours of service since the beginning of time, which is the equivalence of $2.8 million. So having volunteers on site, having their expertise, having the ability to have them put in an extra set of hands and that sort of thing really helps the sanctuary all across the board. There are different ways to recruit volunteers, and you can't stop thinking of enough ways. Of course, you want to go through social media, newsletters, or emails from your facility. We have a little flyer, a little card that explains how to sign up to volunteer. I email applicants on a regular basis. These are the upcoming orientations. Please plan on joining us if you can. And then anytime we go out for an outreach event, we're always trying to encourage other people to volunteer at the sanctuary as well. I've done talks to continuing education at our local college for retirees. We go to local fairs and festivals in the area. We join parades, anything that we can do to get our voice out there and to let people know that, yes, we do have volunteers and we're always looking for more volunteers. So one of the first things that you have to do is figure out how to train your volunteers. You can't just toss them in there and expect them to know how to do things. And so the very first thing we start with is a volunteer orientation. I use an example all the time that when you're teaching a child to tie their shoes when they're 5 years old, it takes a long time. It's so much easier to just tie their shoes and say, hop in the car. But at the end of the day, you really need them to be able to tie their shoes so that when they're 7, 8 years old, you can say, tie your shoes, we're leaving in 5 minutes. The same thing goes with volunteers. Yes, it takes a minute to get everybody trained and up to speed, but once they are, then they take over from there. And it's actually now our volunteers that are training new incoming volunteers. So we start with a volunteer orientation and a tour of the facility. We let them know what to expect and what not to expect volunteering. I also give them a little Chimp 101, just some information on the residents that we have. We also have some pretty strict vaccine requirements, so we go over all of that information as well. And then I schedule their first shift with them so that I can be sure to pair them with another volunteer that can show them the ropes in whatever department it is that they choose to begin. One of the things that we do is we provide online classes, and I know this is a lot of words on the screen, but I would never have been able to remember what some of the online courses are. So at the very beginning, we have volunteers complete 3 separate online courses. They're not terribly difficult, but they need to complete these courses within the first 90 days. It really gets them into the gist of volunteering and what it is that we need for them to do and gets them committed, and we can see if they're following through with the different things that we need them to do. So our very first tier of online courses is about zoonotic disease and biosecurity, bloodborne pathogens, and great apes. Now, as our volunteers progress throughout our tiered volunteer system, there are advanced courses that they'll need to take later on too. So later on, once a volunteer has completed all of the requirements needed to enter into helping chimp care, they also then have to take more courses like working safely with dangerous animals, fundamentals of animal learning, sanitation and hygiene, disaster preparedness, government regulations and inspection readiness, and then driving safety off-road vehicles. Because of course, I'm sure your facility has golf carts as well. And it's always helpful if we can say to a volunteer, oh, we ran out of chow. Would you run over to the building to pick up a new bag of chow for this villa that needs more chow? So having them be able to drive our golf carts is actually very helpful as well. We also provide advanced training throughout the year. So 2 times a year, we have more over and above our regular training, we have advanced training. So we have advanced emergency codes training, then followed by tour guide training, followed by gift shop training, and then kitchen trainer training. So when the volunteers go into the kitchen trainer session, they then learn how to train new volunteers in that area. Same with the gift shop. They learn how to train new volunteers so that if we have somebody new and they want to work in the gift shop, I can pair them with a volunteer who is very familiar with the gift shop, knows how to run the software, the square, where all the inventory is, all of that. Our chimp care assistant training is led by our care staff because that is our most sensitive area. That's the area that we need to know for sure that all of the volunteers are aware of all of the rules and policies and procedures that we have in the villa, because there is zero room for error. They have to know exactly what to do. So we have our care staff teach that training. And then of course we have our golf cart training as well. And those go all throughout the year. Our volunteers do pretty much everything at Project Chimps. One of the most important things that made this possible is that we had a very clear goal and idea of what we wanted our volunteer program to be. Yes, we wanted volunteers to make meals and enrichment, and it's hugely helpful, and it takes an enormous amount of pressure and time off of the care staff's hands so that they can then focus more on the chimps. But we also knew that someday we were going to want to have volunteers help run our events and tours and help run our gift shop and help us with chimp care. So we knew that we were going to be expanding as we grew, and we just each step at a time took a little step forward to making all of those things a reality. So you really need to know where volunteers could benefit your facility and work towards that goal. Even when it's a little scary, look at, why is this scary? Why is it scary having volunteers in the villa? And then what can we do to make that not as scary and make it safe for everyone? We always start volunteers with mentors, whether they're with a staff member or another volunteer. They're with somebody that's experienced and knows all about the sanctuary and can answer any questions that they may have and can help them with getting acquainted with the sanctuary. And then finally, if a task can be done by a volunteer, let them. And that goes for all sorts of things. If you have flyers that are at the printer that need to be picked up, a volunteer can pick those up. If you're hosting some guests at your sanctuary and you've ordered lunch, yes, you can place the order and pay for it, but instead of taking your time to hop in the car, drive out to the restaurant, back to the sanctuary, get things set up, you can assign that task to a volunteer. You can see in this picture that we have ML and Steve, two of our volunteers. Steve is on our truck insurance, so he is able to drive our Project Chimps pickup truck, which he does to pick up wood wool, pick up chow for the chimps. He even has been on some chimp transports to help drive the truck. We have people that are retired truck drivers, so they're much better at handling a big rig than some of our staff members that have not done so. So if a volunteer can do a task, absolutely let them do that. Have them address your holiday cards or set up your decorations for your events. All of those things free up staff time to spend more time on the residents, which is very important. So here at Project Chimps, we have a tiered volunteer program. And I think I have one more video for us to see about our different levels of volunteers.
In general, they are much stronger than us, they're much faster than us, and they're ridiculously intelligent too. So coming into it, when we teach the volunteers, when they go through the chimp care training, that's something that we discuss. They are dangerous. This is something you need to be aware of. And then we go through all of the safety protocols.
We are thoroughly trained. We have a wonderful training person and we have a wonderful training course. And it's very clearly outlined where we stay in relationship to the chimps when we are in the villas. How we handle things, what we do is very, very clearly outlined. We don't do anything to risk ourselves and we don't do anything to risk the chimps.
So inside of all the buildings, we have very distinct lines that mark, hey, don't pass in front of this. It's bright red, you can't miss it. We don't want your hands getting close to the mesh, anything like that. So volunteers always, unless we're in a room cleaning where we've already cleared chimps from that room, they're 5 feet away from the chimps at minimum at all time through a barrier. And they know that too. That's something that we talk about when we do that chimp care training. That is taught by one of our caregivers as well. So you can get somebody on the inside also talking to the volunteers.
The knowledge of the care staff and also the knowledge that is imparted to volunteers, it is extremely safe. We know exactly what to do in an emergency. We drill, we're trained, we go through it yearly, sometimes more than that in a year, semi-annually, sometimes even quarterly.
So having volunteers come into an organization that's new to them, that we have specific ways of doing things, and we also work with dangerous animals, is scary. It is, there's no way around that, but we have done a really good job of putting rules, trainings, things into place to make it a safer experience and a more rewarding experience. And when we have the volunteers coming in and helping us, that in turn makes them want to help us more because they see firsthand everything that we are doing. So we're
Okay, so, oops, sorry about that. Let me share this screen again. Can you see that screen okay, Allie? I think so. I haven't seen anybody tell me that they can't. Okay, yes, they see it. Okay, so we have a tiered volunteer program. You can see in this picture that we have volunteers in a red t-shirt, a yellow t-shirt, and a purple t-shirt. So volunteers start at the red level, and we make them red on purpose because that color is very easy to see. So if we see somebody wandering around, not knowing what they're doing, and they're in a red shirt, we can stop and ask them if they need help with anything. We encourage them to give 2 volunteer shifts per month, 2 4-hour shifts per month. During that time, they are mentored. So they're paired with other volunteers that have been here for a while that can help them in the event that they have any questions. We talked about some online courses. They have the online courses that they need to complete. And then also, before they're able to promote up to the next level, they have some safety codes and tests that they need to take. And those are specific to our facility. Your facility would be different, but at our facility, we have an emergency codes test. We have a test about the property as a whole, and a test about the chimps as a whole. So we have different tests that the volunteers take as well. Volunteers will stay at this level for at least 6 months and 100 hours. We've put some different restrictions on volunteers. We ask for a minimum of 2 volunteer shifts per month, but also a maximum of 20 hours per week. So if they want to volunteer more than 20 hours per week, that would have to shift them into a different program, like our intern program. But at this level, they'll stay there at the red level for both 6 months and 100 hours before they're able to promote to the yellow level. At the yellow level, we ask for an increased commitment of 3 4-hour shifts per month. These yellow level volunteers train the new volunteers that are coming in. They have some higher level online courses and also some department specific training. They'll stay at this level for an additional 6 months and an additional 150 hours for a total of 1 year and 250 hours before they would be able to promote to the purple level. Another example that I give to people is that my mom and dad love to work out at the gym. So they go to the gym every day. That's where their friends are. That's where they, make plans to go out for lunch or meet up for birthdays, whatever that may be. Our purple level volunteers, this is their thing. They come in weekly. They serve on our committees. They mentor the other volunteers. They're continuing to learn, nothing that we've assigned to them, but encourage them to read books or watch webinars like this or different things that would help them help the sanctuary more. But these volunteers are encouraged to help all of the other volunteers so that they can be sort of our first line of defense before a volunteer needs to ask a staff member for help. They can always look to a purple level volunteer for that help. We have some promotion, demotion, and termination that we're going to talk about. So as we were talking, we have our hours and length of service, the online courses and safety tests that volunteers must pass at each level before they can be promoted. We have a volunteer committee that has both staff and volunteers on it. The volunteers looking to promote to the next level will fill out an application, and the volunteer committee meets at least quarterly to go over those promotions or those applications and decide whether the volunteer is ready to promote to the next level or whether they need additional training. And sometimes people do need additional training, and that's okay. There's no issue with that. It's just hey, we need to work on this thing or that thing so that we can be sure that they're safe enough to move on to the next level. Each level is given different degrees of responsibility and have different degrees of trust associated with them. Once a volunteer has been in our program for 100 hours in 6 months, most of the staff have gotten to really know them, and they know if those volunteers are good at following directions and listening to our safety issues and know how to respond in the event of an emergency. So all of these hurdles that they go through have a reason and a purpose so that we can be sure that these volunteers are ready to move on in responsibility to the next level. Demotion could be needed in a couple of different ways. So if we have a volunteer that is continuing to have issues or problems remembering our rules and procedures, and we feel like they need some more training, we will go ahead and request that they go back to the red level so that we can get them trained and back up to speed, because we're having an issue with one thing or another. The other thing that has happened on many occasions, people move away, or maybe you have an ailing parent or a child that is needing a lot of attention, or you've had surgery on your back or whatever it may be, and you've had a long absence, but you want to come back. You may start over depending on how much time has passed, to where you then need to go through the training a little bit more and be paired with other volunteers as a refresher before you can be back at the level you were prior to. And then termination is something that you want to be able to have. We've been very fortunate to not really have this as an issue, but we do have policies in place because there is zero tolerance for a handful of things. Obviously, the normal zero tolerance things that you think of when a person is working or volunteering at a facility. But as you know, with an animal sanctuary, there are a lot of weird and quirky rules and procedures for safety reasons. And so we need volunteers to listen to all of those rules the first time. So in the event of a termination, you really want to treat this volunteer similarly to an employee, in that you have very clear communication, very clear warnings, and lots of opportunity for improvement. But you're definitely going to want to not blindside the volunteer, but be with them every step of the way, documenting, of course, and letting them know what needs to change in order for them to be able to stay and volunteer. We have one more video to talk about setting up for success, and we'll watch that and then we'll continue on.
As a matter of fact, the reason we came here is because we had just retired and we wanted something to do. We didn't want to sit around bored. So we came to a public event here, found out that there were volunteer opportunities, and we thought, hey, let's go volunteer there and meet some other humans, because we were new in the area.
Right. I thought it was just going to be a way for me to have something to do a couple afternoons or mornings a week. And it turned out to be something that I need to be here. You know, I really do. It's, I can't explain how it is, but it's become, my heart's here now.
I just like coming to work here and hanging out with my buddies in facilities and, you know, in chimp care and being with other people.
And we really look forward to it.
And it's the camaraderie. That's what makes it what it is the camaraderie. I've made a lot of friends since I've been here, both in the staff and in the volunteers. I mean, they're a great group, and that's why I keep coming back.
Yeah, I just love it. If I didn't love it, at 71, I don't have to work. I don't have to work for free, and you know, and I choose to be here whenever I can.
I wouldn't stick around for 5 years if it wasn't great fun. I volunteer in a number of different places in the community. I do a lot of different stuff in the community, and I'm a nurse too. And this is like my happy place. I come in here and I
So as you can see, our volunteers have met a lot of friends while they've been here. They've learned a lot of different skills while they've been with us. And all of that is, I think, attributed to the ease of the program, how easy it is to get started. Every step of the way, it is very clearly explained to volunteers on what the next step is and what is needed for them to progress. So one of the very first things that was important for our program was to have a volunteer database. As far as I'm aware, this is probably maybe the most well-known. It's called Volgistics, but there are different programs. What I like about Volgistics is that I am able to have all of the information about the volunteers in one place. I can email all of the volunteers, 5 of the volunteers, 20 of the volunteers at one time through that system. I can keep track of all of their vaccines, of all of the online courses that they've completed, the extra training that they've been through. I can make notes about any issues that we may be having. Not only that, but all of the signups or all of the scheduling for volunteers goes through Volgistics as well. So I throw out to volunteers that we need help on Tuesday stuffing holiday cards. Signups are available on Volgistics, and if that's something that the volunteers like to do, hang out with others, other of their friends, and stuff envelopes for the holiday party, they can sign up for that and do that, no problem. If I say I need a group of volunteers to weed Project Harvest, that's where we grow some food for the chimps. And I tell the volunteers, if you hate weeding, don't sign up for that assignment. Yes, we need help weeding the garden, but there's going to be one of those weird people out there that really enjoys weeding gardens. So if that's something that you dread and you just don't want to do, then don't sign up for it. That flexibility of them being able to choose what day to volunteer and for how long and in what department, and they can change all throughout as long as they've had the proper training, and having that that varied experience and the ability to maintain their own schedule and their own flexibility has been hugely beneficial. Also, if they need to take themselves off of a schedule, maybe a volunteer is signed up for chimp care tomorrow or in the kitchen, and through the night they end up with a stomach bug. They can go into Volgistics, remove themselves from the schedule, and then we're aware that they're not going to be in that day. I lead orientations monthly for our volunteers. It used to be every other month when we were having larger groups, but ever since the pandemic, we've been trying to keep groups to a smaller level. So we are now doing volunteer orientations monthly. I change those up to different days. So sometimes they're on a Monday, sometimes they're on a Saturday, sometimes they're on a Thursday. That way, somebody's always able to make it work within their schedule. We also have volunteer appreciation and recognition. So throughout the year, we have a couple of times that we get together with the volunteers. In the fall, we have our Thanks for Giving, where we have a potluck and staff and volunteers come together. And it's just a lot of fun, being away from the sanctuary in regular human clothes, sitting and sharing a meal with our friends. And that's a lot of fun. And then in the spring, we also have a volunteer appreciation lunch where we get to spoil the volunteers, cater in a lunch for them. We serve them that day instead of them helping us. And volunteers have different awards that they are given depending on, it's kind of like an employee of the month, but it's a volunteer of the year. Or, in this case, you can see a picture of Alan, and he won our Monkey Wrench Award in 2020 for his service in our facilities department. Also, we've been very fortunate to have really motivated volunteers that can be given a task and then they complete it. We have a whole committee for our hiking trail. The hiking trails were put in entirely by volunteers. They're maintained by volunteers. Volunteers have created a 5K-ish that also supports the sanctuary through an event. And they have ownership over that hiking trail. They take pride in the hiking trail, and it is taken care of all of the time and is a constant income earner for the sanctuary with parking suggestion donations, people who learn about the sanctuary and decide to come back for a tour, people who enjoy their time on the hiking trail and decide to give an extra donation. So the volunteers feeling ownership over that task increases how great that task or that item is. And again, like I said, flexibility is really, really important. If you can come in for 2 hours instead of 4 hours, we'll take 2 hours. Maybe you can make breakfast for all of the chimps in 2 hours. Maybe you can make breakfast and dinner for all of the chimps in a couple of hours. Or maybe you can make an enrichment project or help our facilities guys with mulching the garden or whatever it may be. But if you have 3 hours, come in for 3 hours. If you have 5 hours and want to do extra, absolutely. But having that flexibility is important for volunteers too, because not everybody is a morning person or everybody an afternoon person. Some people travel from far away, and so they need extra time to be able to drive to the sanctuary, and they can't arrive before 10 a.m. So having that flexibility is really important. Another thing that I think is really important is a weekly email. I email our volunteers, all of our volunteers, every single Friday without fail. I'm not saying that everybody has to do this, but it's important to me. So even if I'm on vacation, I send out that weekly email on Friday. Now I write it before I leave so that I don't have to do work while I'm on vacation, but I actually press send on the email every single Friday, regardless of where I am. 99.9% of the time. If I'm someplace without cell service, then another person will send it for me. But that email goes out every single Friday. And what's inside the email are the different things that we need help with. Maybe we need help on Thanksgiving because we're working with a skeleton crew of staff because it's a holiday. Maybe we need help with a celebration that we're going to throw for the chimps, or an event that we're hosting in another couple of weeks, or a tour that's coming through, a school group, or speaking at a school group of kids at the actual school or at the Chamber of Commerce, whatever that may be. I'll list all of those things that we need help with, and volunteers can then go into Volgistics and sign up for those things. I also like to include staffing updates, and that really keeps the volunteers as part of our group or a part of our family. They are up to speed with everything that's happening, people that are coming, people that are going, and it gives them more information and more inclusive into the sanctuary. I also include a weekly agenda. On Monday, we need help in the gift shop. On Tuesday, it's Marlin Chimp's birthday. On Wednesday, we have 3 tours happening. On Thursday, we have Chimp Bingo. So all of those things can be included in the weekly agenda. And then also often I include a tip of the week. Please don't forget to put the date and ingredients on the enrichment item that you made per our USDA regulations. Things like that, we can always add those types of items into that tip of the week. And I love this picture of Lori here with our beehives. Like I said, our volunteers do everything at the sanctuary. There's not a square inch of the sanctuary that they have not touched or participated in or helped with. That includes our apiary, our hiking trails, our food garden for the chimps, our browse garden for the chimps. It includes chimp care, admin staff, or admin tasks. We have a retired CPA that's helping us with some of our accounting. We have volunteers with all sorts of things, and it's fun. They get to decide if they really enjoy beekeeping or not. It's something that they've always wanted to do, and now there's an opportunity to help our staff and learn about bees, and then maybe they go and keep bees at their house as well. So there's lots of opportunity to learn as well as lots of opportunity to help. And that's a beautiful picture. I could go in for days about bees. I love bees and beekeeping, but I'm going to spare you all that and just move on. Another thing that I think that you could recognize from the last video that we have is that we've really created a community. It's not all work and no play. There are lots of things that we do that builds this community and makes us feel like a family, and it's really important. So the picture on the left, you can see a group of us have been out hiking. We actually do that on a fairly regular basis, sometimes at our sanctuary, sometimes at different hiking trails, so that we can see how we can improve our own hiking trail. In the center, you can see a group of volunteers and I sitting with the lovely Dr. Jane Goodall. We had a field trip and drove down to see her speak in Tampa, and that was an amazing experience. And because we have such great and amazing volunteers, she very much wanted to meet our volunteers with all of the things that they have helped us with in the sanctuary. So that was a really special experience too. And then on the far right, we've also had a book club from time to time at our sanctuary. And you can see me there with Erica and her book, Monkey Business, which was one of our last books that we read for our book club. We've had lots of authors join us, and it's really great to hear from the author and be able to ask the author questions. You don't have to do the same kinds of things that we do. You can do all sorts of different things. We've take a field trip to a local zoo, or maybe you have a bunch of people that like to knit. And so you have a crafting circle that meets once a week, or maybe a lot of you like to do yoga and you do yoga on the property somewhere. Creating a community, I think, is really important in sanctuary life, because we work really hard and we put our whole heart into it. And knowing that you have a family of people around you is very helpful and comforting. I hope that you've learned some good things from me today, and I hope that you have a lot of questions. I feel like I've forgotten a whole bunch of things, but I want to open this up for anybody that may have questions here at the end.
Thank you, Kathryn. That was a lot of information, and I think you made it very clear how much thought and work has gone into making Project Chimps volunteer program what it is, and how rewarding it's been, not just for you, but for the volunteers and this community you've created. It's really wonderful to see, and I'm sure that the sanctuaries in attendance here and who will watch the recording, they'll take a lot from that.
Good. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm afraid public speaking isn't my forte, so it makes me very nervous, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions via email or phone, tomorrow or a year from now. So whatever works for anybody else.
Thank you. I know we did, it looks like a comment has come in. And I have some that were actually submitted before, but let's answer this first one. It says, is the t-shirt color system intimidating to new volunteers, or is it inspiring?
So I believe it's inspiring. To me, I probably would be a little bit nervous about it, but I've never heard any of the volunteers say that. They're very focused and inspired to move to the next level, and they are very proud of their color of shirt. So yes, every volunteer is motivated to get to that next level and to do all of the different tasks and courses and tests and things that they need to get onto that next level. And that's another reason why we have a lot of success with our volunteers, not having problems with safety, knock on wood so far. None of our volunteers want to have this opportunity taken away from them. And so everybody is very diligent about following the rules, and the rules are just out there and clear, and we're happy to answer any questions about any rules that they have, because sometimes they're weird. But yeah, all of the volunteers want to maintain that shirt and have that status.
Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of sense that then the staff can clearly see the experience level of each volunteer, because it can be a safety issue, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Well, human chimps.
That's a great reminder too. When we see a volunteer in a red shirt, we know that they have had X, Y, and Z vaccines. When we see a volunteer in a yellow shirt, they have increased vaccines because they are more in contact with the breathing space of the chimps. And when we see somebody in a purple shirt, we know that they know all of the rules and all of the procedures, and we feel very confident that they're not going to do anything that would jeopardize the sanctuary in any way.
That's great. And it actually relates to one of the questions that was submitted ahead of time and also just now in the chat. It's been asked how much contact volunteers have with the animals, because I guess some sanctuaries have not allowed any contact, or allowed volunteers to get close to the residents, and then that can be a deterrent, because some volunteers want to be close, right? They love these animals, and they may not want to volunteer if they feel like they're just banished to the kitchen forever.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
That's awesome. So we are very fortunate to have a big picture window in our kitchen that looks out on the chimps. So even if a volunteer is at the red level, which has very limited, if any, contact with the chimps, and of course there's zero physical contact, but being in their presence, they can still see the chimps at all times when they're there volunteering. Um, uh, oh heck, I think I forgot what you said. Remind me again.
Just, I guess, is it a
Oh, how much,
deterrent? Yeah.
yeah, how much time? So by the time they get to the yellow level and go through chimp care training, they can then be in the villas with the chimps and the care staff. At first, they're not ever left alone. They're always with a staff member. By the time they get to a purple level, they may be able to be left by the sink to clean toys while the care staff is, feeding the chimps or shifting them or whatever that may be. We we try to reward the chimps with the volunteers with as much chimp experience as possible. So after 50 hours of service, they're invited to go in and watch the chimps eat dinner. After 100 hours of service, they are invited to bring their friends and family for a private tour. After 5 years of service, they get to participate in our lunch launch, which is where we actually feed the chimps with a slingshot from the top of one of the buildings. As far as hands-on work for the chimps, that is not what we have our volunteers do. Our volunteers don't feed the chimps. They prepare the meals and they prepare the chow bags, but they're not the ones that actually deliver that food. And it's so far, I say to people that usually people start because they want to be with the chimps and they want to have that experience, but they stay because of the difference that they make and the friends and the family that they make while they're there. So I started wanting to be near the chimps, but that's not why I stayed there. It could be weeks or even months between times that I see the chimps because I work at a computer all day. But yes, when I first started there, I wanted to work with them, work closely with them, but all of that changes throughout time.
Yeah.
And
No.
yeah, one of my most important rules that I say to volunteers when they're going through orientation, and something I feel really strongly about, is the more people that love the chimps, the better. They feel it. I know they feel it. And it makes a huge difference and impact on the sanctuary as a whole. We've set up a community that, you leave behind all the negativity. I'm certainly nicer at the sanctuary than I am in line at the grocery store, right? So when I go to the sanctuary, maybe I had a fight with my husband or child before I left in the morning, that stays at home. And when we're there, we're just kind of this hippy dippy, love everybody kind of place. And it really makes a difference. It's people's happy place.
That's what the animals deserve. That's
Yes.
beautiful. Yes. So another question that came in was how do you vet potential volunteers? Do you conduct background checks? If so, what do you use to do that? How does that work?
So at this time, we're not doing background checks. We've looked into it back and forth throughout time. And that is something that we would love to be able to do in the future. It's just not realistic at this time. However, in their volunteer application, when they apply to become a volunteer, we ask for some references, and you can get a really good feel for people right from the beginning. So, we have all that extra time, 100 hours or 250 hours before they're ever, in a place where we would have concern. And by that point, we know the volunteers very well. It has been months or even years before they get to that point. And so we've gotten to know them all throughout that time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So another question, some of these questions have been answered as we go. Tessa asks, what recommendations do you have for new sanctuaries that are building their volunteer programs from the ground up? And I would think, before animals are on site, I'm sure there's administrative, fundraising, website, that kind of thing. But what are your thoughts on volunteer work when there's not animals yet?
Yeah, well, I mean, even before there are animals, you still have to set up habitat space or housing or protocols and write manuals and things like that. So, like you said, there are lots of opportunities even before the animals are there. Dang it, I forgot again what the first part of the question was. Do you mind to repeat?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think you answered. She just said, what recommendations do you have for new sanctuaries that are building their programs from the ground up and don't have animals yet?
Right. So we started really, really small. Our very first orientation was with 10 volunteers. And we took those volunteers, and I was in the kitchen with them, training them, and I was with them every step of the way. So I was away from my computer, and I was just the experienced yellow level volunteer, even though I was staff, to train those incoming volunteers. Then several months later, we had a big orientation and had another 30 volunteers that joined in. Now, they don't always stay. They don't always follow through, which is okay. But then sometimes I would train them. Sometimes some of the original volunteers would train them and move from there. So it all started with just the kitchen, making meals and enrichment, and just facilities. And then it snowballed from there. Then we added some administrative tasks. Then we added our events and tours. Then we added Project Harvest, and then this thing, and then that thing. And then finally, and it took us years to get to where we were comfortable having volunteers in the villas with the chimps and the staff. But now that we do have that help, it's a huge benefit to the staff to have those extra set of hands to even just make chow bags or clean the chimps' toys that are filthy at the end of the day. So all of those little things add up to so much time that then the staff can use to do research papers or, whatever it is that they need to do to help the chimp residents at the sanctuary.
Yeah, and it sounds like flexibility is really key because you're learning about your volunteers' skills and then how to best use them. I know when I first started, I was at a sanctuary and they discovered I was good on the computer. So they were using me to create all their signage. And it was great. I was happy. I could do what I do best and help the animals at the same time. So I heard you saying that with the accounting help that you get and the education. I know when we toured for the NAPSA workshop, the woman who was doing our tour was a volunteer and clearly loved what she was doing, was very chatty, very personable, and she fit that role really well.
Yes.
So the bigger your pool is, the more you find those people and how they can specialize.
Well, and in orientation, I'll tell volunteers, no matter what their hobby is, even if it's a weird hobby, somehow we need it. I don't know what it is yet. I don't know how we're going to use it, but whatever you're good at, whatever your skill is, whatever your hobby, whatever your interest, eventually that is going to be needed at the sanctuary.
It's true. So another question, let's see, Morgan asks, do your volunteers typically enjoy doing the same things every time, or would they prefer multiple different departmental tasks? So more varied experience.
So some prefer just one task, and that's what they focus on. But most of our volunteers do multiple things. So we may have somebody who mostly works in chimp care because that's where their love is. That's what they enjoy the most. But they also do tours when we have an open house, and they'll also help us at offsite events when we're doing a Cheers for Chimps. They'll help greet guests or talk to guests or whatever that may be. So most of our volunteers do multiple things all across the board. It's just whatever interests them at the moment. And maybe sometimes they get a little burned out with chimp care. It's hard work. It's hard work. And so maybe they need to take a step back and, go to the facilities department and help build some climbing structures for the chimps instead. Having that variety helps to keep them interested as well.
And better than burnout, which can happen with doing the same sort of work in an emotional setting. Sanctuary care isn't always easy.
It's not. I will ask, there are some volunteers that have, I'll have to stop them on occasion and say, are you okay? Do you need a break? Because you've been here a lot and I don't want you to burn out, because then they're no good to us anymore if they're burned out and they're not coming. So I watch that too. And if I see somebody that's starting to look a little bit frustrated or run down, I'll pull them inside and say, it's okay to take a vacation from your volunteer work, and come back in a few weeks and pick up where you left off. And it's very important.
The same goes for sanctuary caregivers and the paid employees. It's all the same.
Yep.
So let's see. Another question is, do people ever ask to volunteer for just one day because they're in town? And would you ever allow something like that? Like, let's say someone's visiting, for the holidays or something.
Mm-hmm. So we don't generally do, well, we have done single day events, but usually that is away from the chimps. Now, those volunteers, usually it would be a group, maybe a company that does a volunteer day and they bring 20 of their employees, and we have one project that all of them are going to work on. Because we work with chimps, we have a very strict and complex vaccination requirement. So coming in to volunteer for one day is hard to do without it being like a group project. That being said, we also have a program called Chimpcation where volunteers can come for the week. We tell them ahead of time what vaccinations they need. If they don't mind going through those hoops, then we have volunteer orientation with them, and I pair them with volunteers all throughout the week, and they do kitchen shifts, and they do hiking trail shifts, and they do facility shifts, and they help in various parts of the sanctuary and help us set up for open house events and stuff. So we do have opportunities for short-term volunteers. It's sprinkled throughout the year, so it's not every week, but set weeks throughout the year.
And then we have a few minutes left here, but one question I get all the time, I just got it again yesterday through NAPSA. What can someone do if they don't live close enough to a sanctuary? Let's say they live in California and they want to help Project Chimps. What's your advice for someone like that?
I would definitely reach out to the volunteer coordinator. It may not be a great time, but every once in a while, it's somebody like you that is great with a computer and can make signs in California and email them over to us in Georgia. So we have a good handful of volunteers that help us write blogs or thank you letters for donors or different things like that they can do remotely. There's always something that can be done. And then also, having people that live in California or Kansas or wherever they may live, being a part of the sanctuary, even just a small bit, they then tell all of their friends, all of their family, all of their community, and it just snowballs from there. And then the next thing you know, you have a whole bunch of people that have heard about the sanctuary and want to help and support us.
It's a village, right? It's that
It
village.
is. It is.
Yeah. And so one more question came in, and so they asked, how many volunteers do you have in your program? And I think before you answer, I'll point out that Project Chimps has about 100 chimpanzees. Other sanctuaries have 300, others have 16, others have 4. So and different species of animals can require different levels of care. So just keep that in mind, that the scale of what Project Chimps does might be very different from what another sanctuary does. So how many volunteers do you have, Kathryn?
We hover right around 200. Pre-pandemic, we were at about 250, and our momentum was crazy. I was headed for 400 volunteers, and we were doing it. And then the pandemic hit, and things have just changed. And it's not just our sanctuary, and it's not just animal sanctuaries. I'm a part of different volunteer coordinator groups, and it's across the board. Libraries, hospitals, churches, everybody's having issues, but we still hover right around that 200 mark. Not all of them are active all of the time. Some of them are active a very little amount of time, but they have a very specific skill that we need on occasion. So, we started with 10. Actually, we started with 2, and I was one of them. And then we got up to 250, and I'd love to get back there and maybe someday, but it's a lot. It's awesome.
I think you're headed there, but
maybe someday.
We'll see. Yeah. So we've had some great supportive comments coming up too. Thank you for sharing. It sounds like people found this very interesting. So if you attended and if you listened to the recording and you loved it, please follow NAPSA for more, because we will be doing this again. It's been great to see everyone join us. If you have questions afterwards, feel free to contact me at NAPSA through our website at primatesanctuaries.org. You can also contact Kathryn and everyone else at Project Chimps at projectchimps.org. And unless you have anything else to add, Kathryn, I see info@primatesanctuaries.org. That's a good one for NAPSA.
Yep.
I think we're good for today, but this has been really informative, and thank you for your time.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, and it's always good to see you, Erica. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.